There are creatures that hunt out of hunger, others hunt out of hatred. But the Mapinguari hunts for something worse. It hunts because you stepped where you shouldn't have. If you have ever been alone in the forest and felt that strange sensation of being watched, even without hearing footsteps or snapping branches, then this story may not be new to you. The Amazon rainforest is not just dense vegetation. It is a living organism. It breathes, listens, and remembers. In remote regions of northern Brazil, there are trails that simply disappear. Not because vegetation reclaimed them, but because no one returns to mark the way back. Gold miners, hunters, illegal exploresmen, accustomed to violence, isolation, and danger. And when something is found, it does not resemble the work of any ordinary animal. The elders say that before any disappearance, there are always signs. The absolute silence of birds, a metallic smell in the air, footprints too large to belong to a person, yet disturbingly human. And then comes the sound, a scream not of attack, but of warning. There are nights when the wind does not blow, insects fall silent, and even the rivers seem to flow more slowly. At those times, no one leaves their home. Doors are locked, oil lamps extinguished not out of fear of being seen, but out of fear of drawing attention. The Mapinguari does not resemble anything, It is taller than a man. Its body is covered in thick, dark fur, matted with mud and dried blood. Its arms are too long, almost disproportionate, and its hands end in curved claws made to tear, not to grasp. But there is one detail few like to mention: the mouth. It is not on its face. The Mapinguari's mouth is on its abdomen, a grotesque opening filled with uneven teeth that opens and closes as the creature breathes. When it draws near, you do not see it first. You feel it. Unlike other legends, the Mapinguari is not merely a monster. It is a guardian. They say it emerged when humans began to wound the forest too deeply, when the jungle needed to create something that could not be stopped. Bullets do not work. Machetes break. Fire only enrages it, because the Mapinguari does not protect the forest by choice. It is the forest itself reacting. Some say there is not just one, that it manifests wherever the forest is most harmed, as if nature itself assumes this form when it needs to defend itself. An ancient presence, older than names, older than stories, older even than human fear. The elders say it sees something we cannot. Guilt, intention, disrespect. That is why two men may cross the same stretch of forest and only one never returns. It is not strength or speed, it is judgment. There are accounts repeated across different communities. A man runs, the ground trembles. His breathing becomes too heavy to continue. He stumbles, and then he hears the most terrifying sound, possible not a roar, but a deep breath, far too close. When Ji turns, he sees only the massive torso approaching. The mouth and the abdomen opens. The stench is unbearable, rotting flesh, wet earth, rust. The Mapinguari does not kill quickly, because the forest wants you to understand your mistake. The few bodies ever found show no signs of struggle. There are no escape marks, no blood scattered, only crushed bones and faces frozen in absolute terror, as if, in the final second, they understood something they were never meant to know. Some believe the Mapinguari does not kill everyone. They say it chooses one to survive, not as a reward, but as punishment. That survivor returns, changed, empty eyes, a low voice, never able to explain exactly what they saw. They only repeat that the forest has an owner and that this owner does not sleep. These people do not remain long in cities. Noise bothers them, light bothers them. They eventually return to isolated places, living on the margins, as if they are still being watched, as if they know that at some point they will have to return to the forest to finish something left undone. There is an old account passed along in whispers about a group of explorers who chose to ignore every warning. They entered the jungle with machines, fuel, and heavy weapons. They laughed at the stories, mocked the marks on the ground, called it superstition. On the third day, the radio stopped working. On the fourth, the trail they had used to enter simply no longer existed. In the last transmission ever received, there was only deep, rhythmic breathing, followed by a wet sound, like something heavy being dragged across the earth. After that, silence. Weeks later, search teams found remains scattered throughout the area. Trees snapped as if they were twigs, rocks displaced. But there were no signs of prolonged fighting. It was as if everything had ended too quickly or too slowly to leave clear traces. A few years ago, a story began circulating discreetly among river communities and environmental support workers in the interior of the Amazon. It never appeared in newspapers. It never became a report. It exists only in fragmented testimonies, cut audio recordings, and conversations that always end the same way: sudden silence. It supposedly began with an illegal logging operation in an area considered unproductive. The location had no mapped trails and no recent records of human passage. Even so, a small group entered the forest with light equipment, believing they would remain there for only 2 days. On the first night, nothing happened, but one of the men commented that the sound of insects had suddenly stopped, as if someone had turned off the forest's noise. They laughed at him and blamed fatigue. In the second dawn, the smell appeared strong, impossible to ignore, mixing wet earth, rust, and something that resembled old meat. One man left his tent to investigate. He did not scream. He did not call for help. He simply disappeared. The group spent hours calling his name. No response. When the sun rose, they found deep marks in the ground, as if something heavy had been dragged slowly between the trees. The footprints made no sense too large for a man, yet too close together for a common animal. They decided to leave immediately, but the trail they had entered through was gone. Where there had once been an open path, there was now only dense forest. Impossible to cross without tools that had been left behind at the camp. That was when they heard the breathing. It did not come from a single direction. It seemed to echo from all sides at once, deep, slow, deliberate. One man later described it as if the entire forest were breathing along with something greater. When they finally ran, they ran without direction. One of them fell. The others swear that before turning to help him, they felt the ground vibrate. When they looked back, they saw only a massive silhouette among the tree's dark fur, arms far too long, and a strange movement in the center of its body, as if something were opening. The mouth only 2 men made it out of the forest. They were found days later, dehydrated, in shock, unable to explain what had happened. One never spoke again. The other repeated only one sentence over and over until he was sedated. The forest sent a warning. The area was officially closed weeks later, without public explanation. No investigation progressed. No bodies were recovered. The case never existed for those who lived far away. But since then, no one has returned to that region. Neither loggers, nor hunters, nor the curious, because those who live nearby know that certain attacks are not accidents. They are responses. Perhaps that is why no one has ever managed to capture it. Photographs come out, blurred. Videos end abruptly. Footprints disappear before dawn, as if the forest erases any proof that it was ever there, as if it wants to keep the warning limited to those who dare go too far. Today, the Mapinguari is called a legend, but curiously, the areas where it is most often mentioned are the same areas where the forest remains untouched. No trees are cut, no one digs, no one insists, because they have learned. What frightens most after the first encounter is not the attack itself, but what comes afterward. The forest changes, the air grows heavier, the jungle seems more closed in, even on old trails, as if paths are being slowly erased. If you ever walk along a trail and notice that the sounds of the forest suddenly disappear, do not continue. If you smell wet earth mixed with something metallic, do not advance. And if you hear deep breathing that does not sound human, remember, you have already been noticed. The forest does not need you to believe. It only needs you to cross a line. And if you ever hear a scream coming from deep within the jungle, do not answer, because the Mapinguari does not appear to be seen. It appears to bring something to an end. When it decides you have gone too far, there is no running, prayer, or weapon that can save you. The forest simply closes the path behind you and watches as its justice is carried out. The Mapinguari is not just a consequence, it is the forest itself reacting. And if this story caused you discomfort, fear, or that strange sensation of being watched, perhaps it is not just imagination. Legends do not survive for so long without reason. Some stories continue to be told because they are still happening, and as long as people keep crossing limits they do not understand, the Mapinguari will not disappear. It will only wait. Sometimes the warning has already been given.